pleasure to have you join us on Money Matters on TV360 Nigeria. I am Okpeyemi Owosheni. We start off with business news. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, says Nigeria's average daily crude oil production dropped to 1.25 million barrels per day in May 2024. OPEC made this known in its monthly oil market report released on June 12th. According to the oil cartel, the current output figure represents a 2.34% decline from the 1.28 million barrels per day recorded in April 2024. Now, despite the decline, OPEC said the country retained its position as the largest oil producer in Africa, followed by Libya, which produced 901 million barrels per day in the reviewed month. OPEC said Algeria was the third largest oil producer with 264,000 barrels per day in May 2024. We'll go on a short break and be back with corporate stories. Welcome back. AG Mortgage Bank PLC grew its full year 2023 profit after tax by 92% to 428.863 million naira from 223.542 million naira it recorded in year 2022. The company's annual report and financial statement show that for the year ended December 31st, 2023, its gross earnings also rose by about 60% to 3.343 billion naira from year 2022, low of about 2.07 billion naira. Now, while commenting on the results, Ngozi Anyongo, that's the managing director and chief executive officer of the bank, said the economy continues to open up and the demand for housing in Nigeria continues to rise. The bank is positioned to take advantage of the growing demand to extend its reach to reach prospective house owners, particularly first-time buyers. We'll go on a short break, but when Money Matter returns, we'll be discussing federal government slamming 400 million naira fine on 4 banks and others for data breach. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. The Nigeria Data Protection Commission, NDPC, has slammed fines amounting to 400 million naira on 4 banks and 3 other companies for infractions related to breaches of citizens' data. Commissioner of NDPC Vincent Olatunji discloses during an interactive session with journalists to mark the first anniversary of the signing into law of the Nigerian Data Protection Commission Act by President Bola Tinubu in Abuja. The commissioner reviewed that over the past year, more than 1,000 financial institutions, schools, insurance companies, and consultancy firms have undergone investigation for breaches of citizens' data. He also said there were ongoing investigations concerning data infractions in the country. Well, joining me to discuss this further is cybersecurity expert Ghazali Abdulaziz. Thank you for joining me on the program, Mr. Abdulaziz. Now, the NPDC has reviewed that over the past year, more than 1,000 financial institutions, schools, insurance companies, and consultancy firms have undergone investigations for breaches of citizens' data. What do you think are the typical vulnerabilities that led to such large-scale data breaches?
Yeah, we've been advocating for cybersecurity for so long, and as you all know, that the digital economy is evolving, and the Nigeria Data Protection Commission play a leading role when it comes to data governance and when it comes to the protection of data subject rights. So one of the things is that we have said earlier that this digital economy is owned and operated by individual private players in most cases. And it is expedient that the people that own these critical infrastructures, they put in place what we call security framework to make sure that every data that are collected in their space are adequately protected. So having said that, all systems comes with what we call inherent risk. So it is not esoteric to state that the institutions, including the banks that have been investigated, probably they have been found to have exposed their customer data. There's what we call data leakage. You see, when you look at data leakage, it is a situation whereby data are exposed for possible attack. Now, one of the reasons an organization might experience what we call data leakage is that probably their network or their applications are not updated. So And most of the times, you see, we talk about what we call secure software development life cycle. Before now, we only concentrate on software development life cycle. As you all know, that most of the banks, the financial institutions, including insurance companies and healthcare sectors also, they are fully automated. And in rendering service to their customers, they leverage on what we call innovative solutions. Most of these innovative solutions, they come with inherent risk. If as at the time of integration, if as at the time of deployment, penetration testing are not well carried out, you won't be able to identify this vulnerability until they carry out what we call IT audit. So possibly, most of those banks, they were highly exposed as at the time when NDPC came on board to do vulnerability assessment on them.
Now, how would you assess the NDPC's decision to fine 4 banks and other companies for a total of 400 million naira? Now, do you think this is a significant deterrent?
When you look at data protection, it is well regulated, and for anybody or any institution that is found wanting, there are fines and penalties as spelled out even the Data Protection Act. According to the Data Protection Act, we're made to understand that if any organization fall prey of a data breach, they are going to be fined 2% of their annual gross revenue of their preceding year, or they'll be fined 10 million naira, whichever is greater. In another provision, we are also meant to know that for companies that do not process up to 10,000 data subjects, they will be fined 1% of their annual gross revenue of their preceding year, or 2 million, whichever is greater. So when we put that into context, you see, we are talking about four banks here. We don't know the level of their discrepancies and or the level of the data breach. You see, let me borrow a leaf from what is happening throughout the world. When there are incidents like this, it is expedient that data regulators like the NDPC in this instance, they should make Nigerians to be aware. They should make Nigerians to be aware of what the issues are. We already told that, okay, the 4 banks and 3 other institutions, they have to pay, is it 400 million or something like 400 million? The truth of the matter is that what are the level of the damages that were done? We have read about data breaches in the past in developed world. We have read about Equifax. We have read about Yahoo. We have read about Uber. We know about data breaches they suffered and the amount of data subjects that were affected. So I may not be able to say that 400 million is sufficient as of today. I don't know what the level of malpractices were, because they didn't make that known to the general public. According to their report, I also went to their site to see what the issues were. It is not difficult to deduce that the banks and 3 other companies were found wanting, but what are the issues? You can say a data breach occurred. What is the level of exposure? Whose data were exposed? What you see, for data, we have different level of data. Some are sensitive, some are non-sensitive. Let us know how sensitive or how bad the situation is. But going back to your question, 400 million, I don't think that is bad, because you know, we are new in that space in terms of regulating our data. And don't forget that the report also stated that the Data Prevention Act or the Data Protection Act was signed in 2023. So we should know that it's not a bad start, but I think we should know what data we are actually exposed or we are affected.
Now, let's talk about the impact. Do you think this fine will be impactful on the overall data protection landscape in Nigeria?
Yeah, it's going to reshape the way data processor, the way data controller, and the way data custodians handle data subject records. You see, the truth of the matter is that if NDPC do not nail some companies or some organizations, others will not sit tight. The truth of the matter is that I can assure that even the 400 million is not too bad for banks, because if you look at their annual gross revenue, I believe even that 400 million will have been a negotiated value, because if you take 2% of the annual gross revenue of banks. You know what we're talking about. So, but having said that, for those banks, it is a good action, it is a good move on the part of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission for other organizations that handle and process customer data to be very careful. I think they can't get it right better than now, and for them to have penalized those companies that are found wanting. I think it is the right way to go. So many companies will sit tight, nobody will want to be fined, and the way to go, we talk about digital economy, and we are moving towards that through our strategies. And people want to see confidence in that space. And for every regulatory harm, they need to fine and penalize any gladiator in the economic sector that is not protecting customer data, because the level of exposure can bring a lot of damages, not only to the company that is being exposed, because the digital space is interconnected. So if one end is exposed, every other end is also exposed. And don't forget that we are as strong as our weakest link. So the 400 million levy on those companies is a deterrence to people operating in that space. And your guess is as good as mine. Everybody is in the digital space as of today, and everybody wants to be protected, and to also have that level of assurance that their data that is being processed by any business body is well protected.
So the Nigerian Data Protection Commission Act was signed into law by President Bola Tinubu on June 12, 2023. Do you think it has influenced data protection practices in Nigeria so far?
If you look at the trajectory as of today, we are meant to understand that the private sector compliance was about 49% before today. And I can tell you that has grown at least significantly to about 55% according to the record you have in the public domain. And even in the public sector also, the level of compliance to data protection was actually below 10%. It was about 5% according to record we have at our disposal. But as of today, it is sitting at a circa 14 to 15%. That's not bad. But if we take an holistic view of the whole data protection ecosystem, we have a very long way to go. And I want to judge us quickly with the developed world. But if we judge ourselves relatively with other African countries, I don't think we are doing badly. But if we now look at what we process as a country, going through our GDP record and our economic activities, we need to buckle up. We have a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of policies and regulation enactment. And apart from coming up with policies and regulation, I think we need to do better in terms of implementation strategy. The NDPC, they have licensed organizations that they use for regulation audit, for IT audit. I think more of that should be done. I want to give kudos to them, but I think there are a lot of ways we need to improve the way we do things. For example, even some organizations that try to register for data protection service, or those that try to register their employees as data controller, as data protection officers. Some of them, they find it very, very, very difficult to get all this thing done. And these are things that go a long way to protect an organization as they process data of customers. See, we shouldn't shy away from the fact that we need to do better, but we must also appreciate the fact that where we are today is better than where we are at yesterday. The only thing we need to do is to consolidate our effort and see that we move in a geometric manner and not an arbitrary manner, because the people that are taking advantage of the digital vulnerabilities, they are moving in a very high speed. So we can't be sleeping on the wheel, and we can't continuously do what we call catch up. We need to take a step ahead of these guys. And that means that everybody, those that are processing data, those that are warehousing data, those that are in charge of IT infrastructures, must make sure that they put in place regulations, policies, cybersecurity cultures in the organization, so that people will be protected from end to end. Thank you.
But what do you think are the most significant changes or improvements you've observed since the Act was signed into law last year?
Yeah, one of the significant things we must appreciate is that even the way public organization process data now has changed. The way we do things recklessly in the past is not the way we do things today, because people are held responsible for their action. The banks, the insurance companies, the health sectors, they have also improved. Some of these things might not be too visible, but for those of us that were in that space, we have seen significant changes in their business processes. Before now, we know that the way customer data that be handled, we can't even qualify it because we're below standard. But if you look at global metrics as of today, Global Cybersecurity Index, Nigeria is moving up in data protection index. But I've stated earlier that we need to move at a geometric pace. What we are doing is still arithmetic in nature. So what are those things we need to do? We need to start, we can bring all these IT operators like the telcos, the banks, the digital economy guys, the fintechs. Let's bring them together to see that all our assets are adequately identified and protected. But back to your questions, back to your question, I can tell you for sure that we have seen positive ways of handling data of customers. We have seen positive way that government use e-governance to process citizen data. So the Data Protection Act has improved the government at one end and the private sectors at the other hand, because both agents are huge custodians and huge processors of customer data. So I can tell you that we have seen significant improvement in way things are being processed. But do we need help? The answer is yes. Do we need to collaborate? The answer is yes. So, and I think last week, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, they held a breakfast with data protection officer across the country. It was held in Ikeja. Sorry, it was held at Ikeja here in Lagos. So I believe the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, they are collaborating significantly with people in the space. But there are areas of improvement that we need to employ. And these have to do with organization, doing what we call simulation and penetration testing. But I think we have seen improvement in the way organizations are handling customer data. Data protection is different from cybercrime. We must understand that. But data protection is the way of curbing cybercrime. If your question is, has organization witnessed cybercrime attack? The answer is yes. That might not be as a result of the fact that they are not protecting data, but it might be as a result of the fact that they are exposed from their digital ecosystem perspective. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Ghazali, you would agree with me that some sectors are more vulnerable than the other. Now, what sectors do you think are most vulnerable to data breaches and why?
That's a very wonderful question, Okpeyemi. But I want to add one sector to that list also, the health sector. I think it is omitted, and the health sector is also very strategic. You see, among those sectors you have mentioned, as that today, looking at our economic activities, I'll be tricked to say that the financial sector should take the lead. But I can tell you that every other sector as mentioned, they're also as important as financial sector, because they all warehouse what we call sensitive information, right? The telcos they're an enabler, right? Telecommunication is very, very important. And don't forget that even the telcos, the telecommunications are today, they're also engaging in what we call financial activities. We have seen MTN come up with Momo. We have seen some other ones also. They have theirs. So what I'm saying in essence is this: all of them are important, but the financial sector, looking at the fact that for every cybercrime, the motive is either for financial gain or reputational gain. So I would say the financial sector will take the lead, but then every other sector, they are as important as the financial sector. For example, the education sector is also experiencing what we call geometric integration into IT. The way educational services are being rendered pre-COVID is not the way they are being rendered as of today, which we are in the post-COVID era. So, borrowing a leaf from that, I also say that the education sector, they are integrating fastly into IT, and the data they process, people use their card to make payment for education service. You want to pay for your children semester or tuition. If you want to pay for your children tuition fee, you use your card to make payment. You are using the education sector to process the financial information. So all of them, they were sensitive information, and I think all of them should take every data, especially the sensitive data that they are processing through their platform, seriously. The protection should be across board, and that is why the Data Protection Act is for everybody that is collecting and processing data. So I don't want to say one sector is more important than the other, but in terms of volume and sensitivity, I want to go with the financial sector. Thank you very much.
The NDPC has disclosed plans to train about 10,000 public servants and about 1,000 data protection officers. Now, how crucial do you think this training is for the overall improvement of data protection in the country?
I believe the NDPC will have done their value assessment very well in terms of the training. You see, the cybersecurity space, you need training, training and retraining. You see, you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So training is very, very crucial in terms of protecting digital assets. But the thing is this, the 10,000 people they want to train, apart from the data protection officer they also mentioned, who are the 10,000 that they want to train? You know, in the government institution, we always hear about training, but who are those that are being trained? Is it the desk officer that are handling and processing those data? So that's another question to answer by the NDPC. But I think training 10,000 officers is huge, and that is the way or the starting point. If you look at cybersecurity culture, an organization should come up with a policy framework. At the end of the day, you have to train your employee to be acquainted with those policies, because cybersecurity, we talk about people, process, and technology, right? So people is very important, and if you look at it in the ecosystem, people is the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity architecture. So training 10,000 people is a great idea. And at the end of the day, after training them, would they be allowed to do their job is another question. So coming training for them is good. But I think post-training assessment also should follow, not only training. So post-training assessment to ensure that these officers, all what they are trained on, they put them into practice in order to better protect what we call citizen data. Because these days, the level of e-governance is going up, and I can tell you that the level we are at the last 3 months is not the level we are at today when it comes to e-governance. We are digitalizing every day, both the private service and the public service. So training 10,000 officers in the future is a good start, but I think they should also allow the MDAs to take ownership of those training, and what the NDPC should only do, because the truth of the matter is that you see, the NDPC can lay the foundation in terms of training those people, but they should let the MDAs take ownership of protecting those assets. NDPC on his the Nigerian Data Protection Commission on his own is an MDA of the federal government, right? Their own is to regulate, to come up with circulars, to come up with policies, the guidelines, regulations. Training 10,000 is good, but let the MDAs that own those infrastructure take ownership of the training so that they can be held accountable. Because if you are training people, and you also be the one to audit them, right? You will be the one to play the spot check role. So training with 10,000, as far as I'm concerned, is not bad, but I think the MDAs they should take ownership of the training, because NDPC training will only be once. I don't know, but training should be what? Should be done on a frequent manner. So MDA should take ownership of training those officers that are in charge of protecting protecting data assets. Thank you.
Well, security expert Ghazali Abdulaziz, many thanks for lending your thoughts on the program. That's it on this episode of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I am Okpeyemi Owoshieni. See you next time.